The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. Thrilled to be here with you this morning. We've got a great guest that's going to be joining us in about 19-20 minutes. Ebony Turner-Bailey, who is the founder and executive director of Prime Speech Solutions and who is a licensed SLP, is going to be joining us, and we're going to talk a lot about speech therapy, about when do our kiddos need speech therapy? And in particular, I'm really looking forward to hearing her talk about how to make sure that our underserved populations are getting access to those services, because I'm seeing a lot of disparity and nobody likes that. So anyway, she's going to be joining us in just a little while. I'm Shannon Penrod, and I am a proud pony. I like to identify that way. Pony stands for parent. I know there's a thing out right now. I haven't watched it yet. It's for persons of no interest, and it's spelled the same way I spell pony, P-O-N-I. But it's not that. My son, I said, what words should I use to describe my relationship to your diagnosis? And he said, you're a pony. You're a parent of a neurodivergent individual. Now, hear me say that he uses neurodiverse. I messed it up already. He uses neurodiverse. Other people use neurodivergent. There are all kinds of reasons why, but I always say it's important to use the words that somebody gives you. So the words that he used, neurodiverse, excuse me. My son, I will apologize when I get home. Anyway, that's what I am. I'm a parent. I make no apologies for that because that is, in fact, my role. A lot of times people will come here to see the show and they're like, oh, is this just for parents? And I want you to know that it isn't. This entire show, we're really here. Our mission is to provide information and inspiration. Now, we want to provide that to the larger autism community that starts with individuals who are themselves on the spectrum, whatever words they use, neurodivergent, neurodiverse, autistic, or on the spectrum, or having autism, or all the words that there are under the sun. Those individuals are the beating heart of our community, and we try really hard to never lose sight of the reason why we are here is for them. But we include in the conversation and want to support them and everyone who loves them. And that is a wider community of people. We feel that if we support the people around that individual and help them to be better allies, that we are also supporting that individual. But we try to make room and space here on the show whenever there is an opportunity for those authentically autistic voices as well. But as you know, if you are watching and you are a parent, or you are a significant other, or a sibling, or a professional working in the field of autism, we care deeply about the people that we love on the spectrum. And we have challenges that we have to have help and support to learn to overcome in order to show up for them, right? And that not having the tools to show up for them can be very stressful. That's certainly my path as a parent that my prayer on a daily basis was, help me to know what to do to help my child. Don't let me be the mom who doesn't know what to do. That was so stressful to me. But I always like to remind everybody that was because I wanted to show up for him. That wasn't because of who he was or how he communicated. That stress was because I wanted to be a good mom. Had nothing to do, really, when you think about it, with who he was and what the challenges that he was going through, right? I still completely adored the ground that he walked on, but I wanted to help support him appropriately. So I like to be clear about that. Anyway, that's what we're doing here. And so we welcome everybody, and we welcome everybody's voices here. And we know we're not all going to agree, because that's life. And that's the I guess the wage of being open-minded and saying I'd like to know more, right? Is that we're not all going to agree. But I think that there are some things that we're going to agree on, which are the rights of individuals on the spectrum, and their right to be able to communicate what it is they want and what they need and how they want to move through the world. So all of that's super important to me. I hope it's important to you too. Our chat is open now, and we're looking forward to, this is my favorite part of being live, is that we have the opportunity for you guys to write in real time and tell us what's on your heart, what's on your mind, what you like, what you don't like. We like suggestions about things that you want to see here on the show, things you want us to talk about, and things you don't. Experts that you would like to see. All of those things and so much more. I don't know whether I have a brain tumor or that light just changed colors. Something just happened and I'm like, okay, that's different. Sorry, squirrel. But we're in a studio and stuff happens. Anyway, our fabulous producer, Chris Desmond, who, my goodness, we couldn't do any of this without him. Let's be clear. He's starting to show you on the screen some of the ways that you can connect with this podcast to ask a question or to watch more and learn more and experience more. So, Nicholas, hello. I'm so glad you're here. You've been a regular lately, and I'm so happy to say hi to you. But that's exactly how you can interact. Right now, we're live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, and about a dozen other sites. And again, Chris is going to be showing those to you on the screen, and I'll talk about why there's a screen in just a second. But if you write in on any of those platforms, it shows up right here on my iPad, and we can have a conversation in real time. Or you can ask a question of our guest that's coming in a few minutes. All good. Now, for some of you, you're watching us on those platforms. And of course, you might be watching us on our YouTube channel, which is Autism Live. We have a second YouTube channel, which is Ask Dr. Doreen, and you can watch. We have, my goodness, 15 years of videos, you guys, that we have been doing. You can go back and watch the early videos when my hair was dark. Let me tell you a secret. I was dyeing it that color. I was already gray. But you can see before I gave up and said, we're just going to let it go gray. It'll look very different. Nicholas says he'd like to come back on the show sometime. We need to chat. Okay, well, let's have that conversation. I would love to do that. And by the way, if you're watching the show and you feel like you have a story topic and that you want to be on, great way to get a hold of me is to send me an email. And we tell people, go ahead, pitch your idea to Shannon at autism-live.com. Tell us a couple of different talking points that you want to talk about and a little bit about you. Nicholas, I know you, but tell me what you want to come on and talk about. And then we just ask that you be patient. I'm not saying don't email me again, but be patient. It usually is at least 2 months before because we plan our shows so far in advance. Like right now, April is locked. Everything for April is already shut down. But we just opened it up for May, for instance, of people that we're booking in May. So a lot of times it takes a while for me to get back to you because maybe we don't have the next month open up. I would say you can email, but if it's a pitch idea, wait at least a month before you say, hey, Shannon, you haven't answered my email, because sometimes that takes me a minute. Okay, so some of you are watching us on YouTube, but some of you are listening to us in podcasts. In fact, many, 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 many more of you are listening in podcasts. And we love that. We're available as a free podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And I should say it's a free download. Now, it will come with advertising. The same thing as on YouTube. It's going to interrupt every once in a while and show you a brief advertisement. And I hope you go, woohoo, that's why this is free for me, right? Because obviously Lights Studio, this costs money. And we don't want to charge you. That's been one of our core values since we started. But we have to keep the lights on. So we do have advertisements on the videos. But if you're a hardcore podcast listener and you're like, I need it ad free, we've got you. There's a very easy site that you want to go to. It's glow.fm, and then you will do a /autism-live. Here's the fun thing. If you subscribe there for $5 a month, you get everything we do at Autism Network. So you get Autism Live, You get Ask Dr. Doreen, and any of the peripheral things, like if we do a live thing, you'll get all of those in your inbox, no commercials. So $5 a month. We're not trying to gouge you. We're not trying to make money off of you, which I know is refreshing and different and weird, and it might make you paranoid, but we're not. So I know it's so rare that it's like, wait a minute, what's the catch here? There isn't. We want to help you, and we have wonderful people that back the show that have felt that way for more than 15 years. So those are all the ways that you can connect. And again, you can email me at any time, Shannon at autism-live.com, and we can have conversations. So today, as I mentioned, we're going to have an SLP joining us in just a few minutes, but let's talk about what this is, because we always have some basic topic for the month of April, and we're gearing up. One of the big topics that we want to be talking about is education. So many of you are having struggles with your IEPs. Boy, I have been inundated with people looking for help for their IEPs, and it's a hard year. It's always hard. Let's remind ourselves that that's sort of the baseline, right? Until, if ever, IDEA is fully funded, it's always going to be hard, because it takes a real issue with our kiddos, that there's supposed to be a real support, right? But it's never been fully funded. And I hope that all of you hear me say that no one has ever fully funded it. It's beyond a political problem, because no party has ever said, we're going to make this a priority. They pass it into a law. It's the law of the land, but it's never had full funding, which is, disappointing. But this year, I will say that I think we're all aware that there have been huge budget cuts to the education department, and there has been some fallout for our kids as a result of that. I am very well aware that the person who is the Secretary of Education said last year that the budget cuts were not going to affect existing IEPs. And we all hung on to that like, people clinging to a life jacket, right? A life preserver. But there is still fallout from it, and we're seeing it very clearly in IEP season this year. So we're trying to give you some shows to help mitigate and help you to figure out what you need to do. And our guest today is going to talk a little bit about speech and what kinds of things you can and should be asking for. Okay. Nicholas, I see your question. Have you talked about a topic regarding on autism, how people can handle visiting correctional facilities on the spectrum? Can you give me more, like, you want to know about them visiting people that are incarcerated, or visiting because they're, tell me more. My head goes to all these different things. Is it that you want to do an educational program for people incarcerated to know more about autism? I'm very, very curious. Tell me more. But anyway, back to talking about SLPs. Our jargon of the day is SLP, because I find that one of the hard things about jargon is that sometimes we just don't even know what the term means, or sometimes it's this, this abbreviation, and we're like, I forgot. Somebody told me what an SLP was, but I don't know what it is. And when you get in the IEP meeting, that can be debilitating. Like, you're talking about something and you're like, I don't even know. What is that, an acronym? I never can remember what, I think that's what an acronym is. So anyway, let's take a look at it. Let's understand. And then we're going to have a guest here who can elucidate even more. So let's take a look at, and by the way, for the jargon of the day, we always used to do a thing where we do two definitions. One was the actual definition, and then we made fun of it. Then we would give you a working definition, because when we started 15 years ago, these definitions were so filled with jargon that nobody could have understood them without a PhD in the subject matter. But then we would give you a working definition, which hopefully would help you to understand what the actual definition meant, and then try to help you to know how to apply it. But I'm so happy that, with our work and everybody else's work, people have gotten better about using words that are accessible to understand things. So now we've switched to giving you 2 different definitions to compare and contrast and to discuss, much the way we did before, but we're not making as much fun of them because they're doing a better job. I like that. Okay, so this is from ASHA.com. An SLP is a speech language pathologist. They work to prevent, assess, diagnose, and treat speech, language, social communication, cognitive communication, and swallowing disorders in children and adults. Now, I don't know about you, but there's some things in there that I'm like, hey, I didn't know that. Like, I must have known on some level, but I never had it really spelled out before for me that SLPs could work on swallowing disorders. I don't know. That was news to me, or re-news to me. I don't know. But I love that if we had done this a couple of years ago, and we did do this a couple of years ago, they weren't including things like social communication and cognitive communication. That wouldn't have been on the list. So I super really loved this definition. I think a lot of people think that you go to an SLP because your child has it at school and that they're just going to work on diction, on articulation, on being able to produce the sounds. And that ain't it. That's only one piece of the puzzle. Okay, let's move on to our other definition. And this one is from WebMD.com. A speech language pathologist, SLP, also known as a speech therapist, is a health professional who diagnoses and treats communication and swallowing problems. There's the swallowing again. They work with both children and adults of all ages in clinics, schools, and hospitals. They can help you if you or someone you love has a developmental disorder, a neurological condition, or a brain injury that affects your ability to communicate with other people. They also can help if you have trouble eating or drinking safely due to swallowing issues. Okay, and that's from WebMD. And really, drilling down on the eating, drinking, and swallowing, because I know there are some of you out there that your kiddos have feeding issues, and feeding issues can be a whole bunch of different things. Let's not jump to conclusions, because sometimes it's food selectivity, that your child only likes crunchy, or your child only likes green. They just have these limitations. But sometimes it's important to make sure that the mechanism is working properly. I laughed there for a second because the light is changing colors on me. I don't have a brain tumor. It's like a disco in here. It's kind of fun. Anyway, amazing people. Now, I want to say very clearly, I know that a lot of times on this show, I wax poetic about ABA and how amazing ABA is, because ABA is what helped my child. But I never want to lose sight of the fact that there are lots of things that are helpful and useful that help an individual to be able to make progress in their life. And I'm a huge fan of SLPs. I'm a huge fan of having speech services for your child. What I always like to say is that for whatever reason, speech services it's kind of like, they say de rigueur, that you're going to get speech services. If your child has a diagnosis of autism, you're going to get some speech services. That was always the thing that we could always say. It's a little in question right now. And I see a lot of people writing to me and saying that they're getting pushback on this. But it was always the thing. You could always get speech services. You just couldn't get very much of it. And while a really good SLP can be very effective at helping you to get to all kinds of progress, it's a little challenging to get enough funding, to get enough of it for it to make a big bang. And so I do want to say that, because in all honesty, if somebody is coming to me and saying, okay, I have insurance funding for 35 hours of intensive ABA and I've got a really good provider, and that's a big asterisk there, a really good provider. But I'm having trouble getting to my 35 hours because school only gave me a half an hour of speech, and it's in the middle of the day, and I'm losing 4 hours of ABA because of having to take them to school, pull them out, bring them back, yada, yada, yada. That I do think that the intensity of ABA is always going to be my first thing. I'm going to say get those hours first. But I never want to lose sight of the fact that if you can work it so that you get both, you're cooking on all pistons. So I am a fan of speech services. I just want you to get enough and have it be meaningful. So Nicholas clarified and said, I was wondering if you could talk on the topic, how people on the spectrum handle those facilities and tips and tricks. That's a whole thing. I would want to get an expert on that. Let me see if I can find somebody who is an expert on that, because that's outside my experience. But it's a great topic. Let me see if I can get information about that. Thank you. Okay, so what I want to do is bring in our guest and have them talk about a whole host of things. And what a lovely expert she is. Ebony Turner-Bailey is a licensed speech language pathologist. She's the founder and executive director of Prime Speech Solutions. She obtained her Master's of Science in Speech Language Pathology from Teachers College, Columbia University. She holds certifications in teaching students with speech and language disabilities and LSVT loud for individuals with Parkinson's disease and other neurologically based communication difficulties. I'm going to have to ask her what LSVT loud. I don't know what that is. I don't know that I've ever heard of that before. But anyway, an amazing professional. We're so thrilled that we get to have her on the show. Let's welcome Ebony Turner-Bailey. Ebony!
Hello. Thank you.
You know what? I don't have my earpiece. Well, for heaven's sake, where am I? Hold on. I've lost my earpiece. We can't have that. Technical difficulties. Sorry.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. That was entirely my bad. So sorry about that. But we're so thrilled that we have you here because I do love speech services. I am a big fan of speech services. I wish that we could get more, and that's one of the things that we're going to talk about. But we want to say that you're in New Jersey, correct?
Yeah. Yes.
And Prime Speech Services is in New Jersey. What's the best website for people to go to learn more about Prime Speech Services?
You can reach us at www.primespeechsolutions. Let me move over.
There we go.
.com. And you can contact us there to find more information on all the things that we do and all the services we provide.
Fabulous, Marv. Okay, so let's back up because I think there's so much confusion right now with the way things are, and let's talk about what might be some early signs that a kiddo, maybe you don't even have the diagnosis yet, but maybe you do have the diagnosis. What are the early signs that show that there are differences in how this child is approaching language and maybe could benefit from services like what you do?
Okay, so I'm going to start off with some of the early signs that you see developmentally for babies. So even at that age, around 6 months or so, you start to see babies babbling. You also start to see them holding eye gaze and, maybe even smiling when you smile at them, or even babbling a little bit back and forth with you if you are engaging with them. And so we're looking for that at 6 months. But if by 12 months, a child is not babbling, a child is not using single words to communicate, then these are signs that there is something going on, a communication delay. We are also looking for pointing or using gestures by the age of 1 or 12 months. These are important because these are early communicative methods for a child to indicate what they want, what they don't want. Mimicking, again, those facial expressions, using facial expressions is something else that we want to see a child doing. We also look for their ability to engage in joint attention. So that is playing with an object and looking at their guardian for like to check in with them to see, hey, are you seeing this? Look at what it did. And that's like the earliest form of like communication that a child really shows, where they realize that you exist, that object exists, and we're all together in this experience.
Yeah.
And so when a child doesn't engage in that, that is also a telltale sign of
Can I
some
stop
concern.
you there and just say that is a huge thing for parents to know? I didn't know that when my son was little. And
Yeah.
and now it's so interesting to me that I love to go to Disneyland, and I don't ride the rides. I get sick on all the rides. But I love at Disneyland, what I do is sit and people watch, which is very fun for me. But it's very
Yes.
poignant because I see little kids and I see exactly what I missed. That there are little kids, even on the tram, that the little kids will be looking, and there's statues of Mickey and Mickey as you're going past on the tram, and they'll be looking at that. And then they turn and they look at their mom, and then they look back at it. And that little triangle of attention, I wasn't looking for it. And so it's so critical that you're saying that to parents, because I think a lot of us don't have that training and don't know that we're looking for that. So this is amazing. I love this.
It's such a small gesture, but it's paramount, right? And so while I said about the babbling was, one of your early signs, this is really, like you said, one of those signs, because you're always trying to get your child engaged in, look at this, and that's one of the ways to kind of build on language, right? Look over there, that's a giraffe or something. So when you have your child's attention and you're able to use the language to pair what they're looking at with the word, we're able to build on language.
Yeah.
So I would say that's the earliest thing, but also there are other signs as well. As your child gets older, I would say around 16 months, you want to make sure that they are absolutely able to use those single words. If not, now this is the time. Please go speak to a professional. By 24 months, 2 years, you also want to look for their ability to use 2 words or more phrases to communicate effectively. But during all of this, every skill that they should have done or have done already, we are also looking for if there was regression. Did they lose any of these skills? This is also very important because every skill that your child gains, they're building off of it. So we really want to be aware of, hey, did they stop doing, they used to say this word. They're no longer saying this word now. And so you want to, address that and try to see if your child can, remember it, recall it, bring it up again, if you rename it, and make sure that this is not just like a temporary, they forgot. Yeah. But you also want to, if it's not, and it is something that is, that they seem to not know the name of anymore, then you definitely want to go and see a professional because there might be something else going on.
And I love this. But let me ask you to clarify a little bit more, because when you say you should go see a professional, who should we go to? Yes. And if they don't give us an answer, who do we go to from there?
Okay. So first, I would say your child's pediatrician, because they should be asking for some of these milestones as well that I've listed. They should also be speaking to your child, especially when they're at the age that they should talk, just so they can get a clear idea of how they are engaging with other people, how they are looking, and all of those things that are social skills that I look for, or speech therapists look for. If you are not getting success with that, you can also see about a developmental pediatrician. They assess more of those behaviors that are being spoken about and look to see what that might be that's causing that. or the disorder or whatever it is that is hindering your child's ability to meet those skills. You can also go to a pediatric neurologist. Those are, when you really feel like something is off, these are the next steps for that. Um, you can even go to a speech pathologist, right? Because we can also say, hey, you know, you might need a further evaluation. While we cannot diagnose that, diagnoses such as autism and those things, we can also see that there is something going on. There might be sensory needs that we can see that your child needs some assistance with. And so we could also support in that as well.
Well, I think all of this is so critical. This idea of looking at these milestones, and if they're not there, going to somebody. I always say to parents, though, I think it's gotten better, but I don't think it's better enough yet. That sometimes they go to the pediatrician and the pediatrician says, "Let's wait and see," and that I'm a big fan of don't wait and see. Go to the next doctor, get a second opinion, listen to your gut. I did not do that, and I have regrets about that because we had regression, and it started. My son was already speaking in full sentences, but then there were two words that were missing from the sentence, and I went to the pediatrician, and she said, "Oh, you're just being paranoid," and I sat on that for a while, and I regret that. I really do. So making sure that, because my gut was screaming no, but she was the expert, so I listened to her. It's hard sometimes, but listen to yourself and go and get a second opinion. Insurance should cover a second opinion. It really should. And don't stop until you get the answers that sound right to you. Because it's I think the guilt of not of having the feeling and not acting on it is the harder thing in life, because you wonder what could have been accomplished in that time. Because, correct me if I'm wrong, Ebony, but for some of these things, if you catch it at the beginning before they've lost all their language, it's easier to work on. Am I right?
Yes. So there is a window of time when children really can maximize on what gets inside their brain
Yeah.
and what they can learn. And so the window is about till the age of 6. And that doesn't mean that it's cut off. It just means that you're like a sponge and you're able to take in a lot more than you can when you're a little bit older. And again, please don't take it as, okay, they're 7, that's it. It's over. It's not. It's just you have to put in a little bit more effort, okay? And so I do want parents to know that you can get the help for your child, and your child can show progress.
Yes.
And that's important to know.
Absolutely.
Communication and language is like, it's a necessity, right? So as long as you're feeding that, engaging with your child and giving them opportunities for language, however it is at this point at your child's current learning abilities, they will show progress.
And I appreciate that, but it's important. One of the things that I know you want to talk about is that sometimes these issues can be misunderstood or completely missed. And so if there's a parent who's listening to this who's like me and like, I missed that triangle of attention, the joint attention thing, just know that it's easy enough to do, but give us a rundown of how these things are misunderstood and missed. It's a lot, right?
Can you clarify what you mean, how they're misunderstood?
Well, so I think that sometimes people will say, for instance, of kids, they say, oh, well, boys speak later, right? Instead of understanding that, no, we're actually missing milestones here. This isn't about putting it off till later. And it's not just the parents. Sometimes the pediatricians are missing or misunderstanding or mislabeling things, I think. But that's me as a parent. I'd really love to hear from you as an expert.
Okay, so thank you so much, Shannon, because there are a few things that I would say cause for misdiagnosis or misunderstanding. And one of those is parents knowing um, what it is that they're looking for,
Yeah.
or what they should expect their child to be doing at a certain age. Um, Listening to people who may not be as knowledgeable, and not just professionals like family and friends, not listening to your gut, like you said, um, but also coming to the doctor. I know this can be tough, but coming to the doctor with like a list of the things that you've noticed, if you can really like sit down and just write it down, because that way you're like giving them more information and they can say, oh, it's not a, one-off type of thing. This, you have a series of examples. And while they should have addressed the even the one example or the few examples that were given, sometimes they overlook it and think it's, oh, they had a hard time processing it at that moment, because kids are learning a lot at one point in time, in a small amount of time. And so if you come with the list, now you have more information. Hey, they're not playing with toys the way that they should by the age of 3. They are not speaking in sentences, and, they're not speaking at all. They don't look at me when I call their name. If you come with a series of things, then it becomes a little bit more difficult for a provider to say. But I do know that can be difficult to create a list because life gets so hectic. Sometimes we overlook things too as guardians and parents, and sometimes our child doesn't do the same thing in every environment. So while I'm with my child at home in their safe environment, they may not show those same behaviors of being able to sit down and complete a task as they would in school, because there may be so much overstimulating things around them, sounds or people talking, or just anything, lights or colors that doesn't agree with them, that overstimulates them. And so certain behaviors don't translate. And so as a parent, if you're not informed about how a child is in other environments that you're not in, you don't always know what to even say. So, overall, you really want to try to speak with teachers if your child is school aged or in daycare or preschool, and try to get as much information about how they are behaving or performing in that setting, so that you can come to the professional, the doctor, the therapist, the behavioral pediatrician, all of those appointments, and come with some proof or some information so that they know, okay, you're dealing with this here, they're doing this in this environment, and they can kind of get a better understanding of what your child is like.
I think one of the greatest inventions in the world is the note feature on your phone. Because I was always a big believer in when you go to the doctor's office, you have a limited amount of time to have this professional's attention and taking a note. But I was the queen of the Post-it note. But then I would stick the Post-it note onto my purse or whatever, and I would get there and I wouldn't know where the Post-it note was. We always have our phones, and there's a note feature on your phone. And if you make a list of the things, and you can add to it over time and be like, oh, that's another thing that I want to talk to them about, to bring up. And I think that all doctors are used to us coming in with the notes now, and they tolerate it well. I find that I don't know how it is for everybody else, but I say, oh, I have a list of things. I want to talk to you first, but I have a list of things, so that they know, okay, it's coming, and that they allot their time properly, because you can see them starting to sweat because they're like, I only have 15 minutes. I hate our healthcare, but ask me how I really feel. But this is your kiddo, and the stuff that's keeping you awake at night, make a note of it. Go to the pediatrician or the developmental pediatrician and have that conversation. Okay.
And sometimes it's hard to, be on point when you're at the pediatrician, because you kind of forget,
So
right?
right.
You're hoping that that visit is good, and you're not always on point to be able to tell them, you know, those things, those examples, so that they can get a clear understanding of what you're experiencing.
Well, and how about the fact that it's a sensory nightmare at the doctor's office for us?
Absolutely.
You're trying to be with your child and take care of your child, and everything is different, and the sounds are different. They're very echoey, and we're all sensory people too. Maybe we don't qualify for a diagnosis, but there's a lot going on in that moment. Just like you were saying for our kiddos, in some environments, it may be too much for them to be able to find the words. It might be difficult for you to find the words in the
Yes.
doctor's office. So make yourself the list. Be kind to yourself and be kind to your
Yes.
child and the time. And I think it's even kind to the doctor. But I want to talk about, you know, I know that you're really knowledgeable about practical things, practical ways that parents can support communication and social connection at home. Because I think that once our kids get this diagnosis, sometimes parents get a little paralyzed. And then they think, okay, well, I'm going to bring them to somebody like Ebony, who's going to be fabulous and going to work with my child, and that's wonderful. So that's all I need to do. But it's not game over, as Lisa Ackerman says, it's game on. What can parents be doing at home?
So one of the things that I like to do at my practice, and many speech pathologists actually do, is we provide the families with pictures to support them at home. So specifically at Prime Speech Solutions, I like to find out what does the child really like for snacks if they're nonverbal at all. We need a motivator. So the motivator might be a snack that they really, or snacks that they really like. And I like to work with parents so that they understand how to use this form of communication to be able to get their child to request that snack using that picture card. And so that parent learns how to no longer let everything be accessible to their child, but they take a step back and they start to work on having that child communicate in some way. Maybe they're pulling their parent to come to the kitchen to point to the sign. And then they work on that sound, the name of the snack, with their child, right? Even if their child can't say it. Oh, you want chips? Oh, okay. Let's get chips. And I also speak with parents to help them to understand that whenever a child is having difficulty communicating or communication delay, give a model. Models are always great. Speak slower, as well as pause after you say things, so that your child is able to process the information and possibly repeat it when they are ready. Hopefully they will repeat it shortly after you give the model. Celebrate what they do, and also leave moments where, hey, if they don't do it, that's okay. Continue to provide the model so they know what to say for next time. And don't let it be a deal breaker if they don't do it. Just move on and, encourage them to do it next time.
I love hearing you talk about this because I believe, like you, that it's all about that positive interaction, making it fun, making it meaningful for them. I think one of the things for me, when because my son had sentences and then lost all communication before we really got help. But it was interesting because years before, my father had had a stroke. As a young man, he had a stroke and had aphasia, and had to go through speech therapy to gain back enough communication. He never got back all of the language that he had lost, but he could speak and tell you what he wanted. Sometimes he would have the wrong word. But we as a family went through that. And so it was interesting when my son lost language, I felt like I might be just one step further because I'd already been through that with my dad. And one of the things that SLP had shared with us is that, when you think about learning any language, we don't think about how we gain language and communication with kids. I'm sure you do, but the vast majority of us, it's just this miracle that happens. That one day kids, they're saying blah, 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 and then they pop out words, and it just sort of happens organically. Yeah. And then when you have to fight for it, you notice things about it. And this SLP was saying, we're going to go back to the beginning, and we're actually going to teach your dad language. And in order to do that with any language, what are the things that we know? If we were going to teach your dad how to speak a language that he'd never had before, we would want to make it fun, and we would want to make it really immersive. That, if I'm going to learn to speak Spanish fluently, I need to be around people who are speaking Spanish fluently. Which, if you think about it, is modeling the behavior, right? That full immersion that we have to give our kids in language, but slowing it down a little bit. If we were going to teach somebody, Spanish, we wouldn't just throw the word water into a sentence with 35 other words. We would be pointing to it, and we would be saying agua, so that we're clear that this is agua. But this could, the kid could misunderstand and think this is bottle. So
yes.
So I love, all these things that you're saying, because they're so critical, but I don't think that they're part of everybody's everyday world. And when you have a kiddo with a language delay, it's almost like you got to slow down and go back to basics.
Can I also add?
Yes.
What I would also tell a parent would be that you have to get down on your kid's level, being observant, to know what your child is into and playing with them where they are. So if they are crashing the cars, you need to crash the cars too, make the sounds, add some words to it, so that they see the relationship between the language and the activity or the action. And that really pulls your child in. But if you are like, no, we need to drive if your child is not ready to drive that train or the cars around in a linear way, then you have to go back to where they are, because that will really get your child to be a part of the play and build on the language, because they are finding it fun at that point in time.
Amen.
I also tell my parents who, if their child is playing by themselves, as a parent, you might have to do other things like fold the clothes or something, right? You can give verbal language to what they are doing. Talk about what your child is doing so that they at least hear the language, like you just said, Shannon, and just exposed to language and hearing, I'm dropping the car right now, right? So you would say, you dropped the car, just to pair it up with their actions, so they are hearing some real-time language to go with their actions.
Yes, amen to all of that. Okay, we're running out of time, so I want to get to some more stuff. This is intensive for parents. They find out that their child has got a speech delay, and maybe they're getting the diagnosis of autism. So we've got all these evaluations that are happening. There are therapy recommendations. There's IEP meetings to go to. And a lot of times it's the parents' first time going through it, and they don't know. So how do parents navigate all this with confidence? What's your advice?
So my advice would be, if you can, bring another person with you, someone you're comfortable with. If you do have a provider that your child is already seeing privately or elsewhere, see if they can join you so you can gain a little bit more confidence. Those would be my starting steps. If you're dealing with a social worker or something to that effect, someone that you've built a relationship with that knows about your child, or maybe not sometimes, but someone that you can speak to that can help you understand what you're hearing, give you that hold your hand while you hear the information. I think that's important. Sometimes it's not always, sometimes you meet the professional that you need right there, for that next IP meeting and setup. So. Sometimes you just have to wait and see. But I would say try to bring someone with you so that you can understand this information and feel a little bit more confident while you're there.
I think that's great advice. I want to acknowledge that I'm going to mess up how you say this, but Hayuhan wrote in and said, "Thank you, Shannon and Live team, for great content and videos. You're great content, Ebony. Thank you for that. We appreciate that. We try. I want to, because I want to talk about our underserved populations. That was one of the things you and I agreed that we are going to talk about. But my last question here is, what are the common myths about speech therapy and autism that create confusion for families? What do you see in your practice?
I would say one of the biggest misconceptions, or where I kind of get a look at me when I introduce it, is talking about using sign language to initiate speech, or for some who have been introduced to AAC, that option as well. So parents might not think, hey, I want my child to talk. I didn't come here for that specifically. And so that is one of the biggest myths. It actually reduces frustration in children because they are now able to communicate in some way using either the pictures like I've discussed previously. Sign language, using sign language, or even the pictures. And AAC is the use of a tablet or an iPad to communicate. And that device, let me talk about that for a quick minute, is where a child would push a button and it might say either a word or a sentence to express what it is within context of what's going on. And so while it is not the child speaking, they are able to convey information. They are getting models. So when they feel confident to communicate, they can mimic or imitate that to say it. They learn the words to say it as well. When we use the sign language, we pair the actions with words. So your child is always hearing the words that go along with the actions, and they are learning what the actions produce as a result. So all of those forms of communication, while they are not always getting verbal expression from your child, they are learning that, hey, this communication is getting me something. If I communicate, I get something in return: attention, an object, my favorite snack, something.
Yeah. I just want to say I'm so happy to hear you say that, because we talk all the time on the show about functional communication. And the other day I was talking to a parent who has a child who's a little bit older, 8 years old, and does not have functional communication. And I said, have they talked to you about using sign language, or a picture exchange, or an iPad, or just a pad? And she said, oh yes, but we, she said, it's just a preference of ours that we want to keep working on language. And I think that's very common. And as a parent, I understood the emotional argument. I know where you want to get. We all want to get there. But I was able to say to the parent, have you looked at the studies? Have you looked at the studies, and do you understand that every day that goes, we've had people before on the show. I really feel that having the right to communicate is a civil rights issue. Right?
Yes.
Right?
Hey,
I believe that
absolutely.
We've had guests. We have a wonderful guest, Mike Hipple. Mike, I don't know if you're watching right now. And Mike is an adult who does not have autism, but he's very interested in autism. But Mike has CP. And Mike didn't get his first device until he was a teenager. And he is a huge advocate and has impressed upon me the importance of giving somebody the right and the method and the tools to be able to communicate their needs. And that it has to start with basics sometimes, but it can flourish. But the studies all show clearly that if a child is having trouble accessing language, and if you give them something that gives them access to communication, you are much more likely to get to speech than if you don't. But it's an emotional issue for parents. I find that one of the things last year, I haven't had it this year, but last year I had just a rash of parents who they were sending, they were working on the stuff at centers and then sending them home with the iPads, and the parents were choosing not to do the iPad because they were saying, oh, but he communicates his needs to me and he points for me and he'll take my hand and take me over and show it to me. And it's this special thing that we have. And I remember there was one dad I got on the phone with and I said, that is your special thing that you have together. And you're afraid that if you let go of that you won't have anything. But what you're telling me is that you wish that he could talk. I'm asking you to do right by your child, and this special little thing that you've had, take a video of it, take the weekend, do it, take a video of it so that you remember it. But as long as you keep doing that for him, you're going to make it really hard for him to make the leap to language. And we cried on the phone, this dad and I, and he was like, I didn't realize that, yes, because he can communicate with me and nobody else, that I was keeping that as this precious thing and that I didn't want to let go of. But, the kid is talking now because
That's amazing.
Because dad was brave enough, and they videotaped it. And I said, I want to honor the fact that it's an emotional thing. I mean, how many of us, we have a different path, but even now I look back at some things that my son did before he had language, and they're like, oh, because that was a phase that he was in. But we all want to get to the language. And sometimes that means we have to give up the very private, personal communication that we were doing with them, because it's not helping them to want to do something more. It's hard stuff, Ebony, hard stuff. But the research is there. You're a person who's doing it. And it is a civil rights issue. We can't get in the way of our kids' progress. Okay, we've only got a couple of minutes left, and I really want to talk with you about the fact that we have underserved populations. And I wish with all my heart that it was this equal and even playing field. But when people are going and asking for speech services, what are the statistics? It's crazy that some parts of our population are just getting these speech services, while other people, it's not even being mentioned. This is unconscionable. What do you see in your practice, and what advice do you have for people to make sure that they're getting what they should be getting?
I do see where I have students who really need the services, and because of their insurance, they can only get a certain number of visits. And honestly, it's a little bit, it makes no sense to me, because a lot of times they need a lot more services. I have a lot of parents who will just pay out of pocket because they know that their child is in need of those services. I would say you need to talk to your state senators and all those people to try to, encourage them. But maybe I shouldn't get political, but really we need to, like we discussed, this is a right. And so people should be able to speak. This is your basic right. And I think that, children, parents, adults, everyone needs to be able to communicate. And so we need to speak to all of the people who have powers and rights and make the changes in our healthcare to be able to give us no limits on the ability to communicate effectively with others.
And there are things built into your insurance. We talk about it here, there are all kinds of things. There's all kinds of workarounds, but you have to feel empowered to be able to have the conversation. And one of the things that I encourage people to do, I see in some of our, and I'm just going to go there, Ebony, and you can say whatever you want, but I see that in some of our communities whether, I see this in the Asian community, I see it in our Black and Brown communities, where when a child is diagnosed, sometimes the family feels like, well, we need to take care of that because that is not something we go to our community with. And I just want to encourage parents, talk to other parents, normalize what are they getting, because I think that that's one of the ways the system takes advantage is by giving my child 20 hours of something and saying to somebody else, oh no, we're only giving out 5. But the reason why I knew to ask to 20 was I asked 5 other moms. And so
Good point.
I want to be cognizant of the fact that there are societal things that are on board that make it difficult to make it your community thing. But I'm saying build a community. Build a community for yourself
Absolutely.
where you have other parents that you trust to say, what did you get in your IEP? Because the school district will tell one parent one thing and go, this is what we do and this is what we don't do. And they'll tell a parent another thing. Makes me crazy. that said a lot.
That's absolutely crazy.
It is crazy. And it frustrates me because I'm not always aware of it until a parent points it out to me and I go, what? Your child, are you kidding me? They did a report here in California. We have the regional center. And let me tell you, the regional center is the best possible thing, except that they play fast and loose with what they tell people. And they did a thing in the LA Times probably 10, 15 years ago where they showed the different regional centers and where they were and what the average cost of what a child got at those regional centers. And it was so humbling. And it like I still have, just like nightmares about this, seeing that there were certain communities where kids were getting nothing. I want to empower parents to talk to other parents to see that they can ask for more. But am I completely barking up a wrong tree here? Do you think that that's a possibility?
I do think that that's a possibility. I do. I do think that parents need to understand that they're not the only one who has a child that, may have some kind of developmental delay or language delay or whatever it is. And so when you speak to other parents, you do feel a little bit more empowered, and the more or the bigger the community or the bigger the group, the more you feel like you can accomplish a lot more. But as one, I agree, it is very tough to even understand where to go, who to talk to, who to even trust. And if you're getting turned away from certain professionals, you do feel like, well, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
I guess, this is just it. And we don't want you to feel like that.
And I do want to say it's not necessarily a face-to-face meeting. There are lots of parents groups that are online, and that you can go on and get on a Facebook group, and it might take you, a lot of the autism Facebook groups, you have to apply because they don't want people marketing. Like, I'm there as a parent. I'm not allowed to talk about the fact that I've had Ebony on the show today because that's marketing. And that's my understanding. If I'm there as a parent, I don't get to market.
Right.
Even though I think it would be helpful to everybody, I'm not allowed to promote it. I get it. It's fine. I follow the rules. But they're free, and you guys can go on these Facebook groups. You'll have to apply, say what your relationship is to autism. You'll have to sign things that say you agree you're not going to market things. But it gives you a place that's free, that's 24/7, that you can ask questions of the group, connect with people, and see. Just the example, here in California, there's respite. And Regional Center gives respite, but it's hilarious in the worst, not funny way that you can sit down 20 parents and say, what did you get? And the answer is wildly different. And what we see is that parents who talk to other parents, because they don't say to you, oh, this is how many hours we're going to give you. They'll start with, how many hours of respite do you need? And if you don't know, right?
You don't know.
If you don't know, so the fact that parents talk to parents, we saw that it raised the number of respite hours that they were getting to something that was in the realm of what they actually needed. Every child is different. Every family is different. It's not like there is a one size fits all. But when you understand that this family is getting 100 hours a month of respite and you were given 5, and 5 is not enough for you, it empowers you to ask for what you need. I don't want to get on a soapbox, but listen, I want to make sure families get what they need.
No, it makes sense. They need it.
Yes. All right. We're out of time. We're over time. But you have been so delightful. Tell us again about your services and who might be calling you.
Hi.
Who's your perfect
Okay,
person? Yeah, go ahead.
So you can reach me at Prime Speech Solutions. Our phone number is 908-899-3399. We provide speech therapy services to pediatric populations. I also provide professional development for adults as well. That's, help with advancement in your career, communication skills, accent reduction, those things. You can catch me on the internet at www.primespeechsolutions.com. And then you can see me on Instagram at Prime Speech.
Wonderful. I'm going to ask you to say the phone number again because I didn't know you were going for a phone number and nobody else did. So grab your pen or whatever now. We're leading up to it. And again, you're in New Jersey. But do you do services at all online or it's all face-to-face?
So I do offer services online, but I'm only licensed in New York and New Jersey.
Okay.
But also I do a lot more face-to-face, especially for my kiddos with autism. And a lot of my little ones, we really need face-to-face.
I agree. So what's the phone number again? Slowly.
908-899-3399.
There we go. One more time.
908-899-3399.
Perfect. Ebony, thank you so much. This has been a wonderful conversation. I've so enjoyed you. And thank you for all the amazing work that you're doing in this field.
You too. Thank you for all you're doing. You are doing an amazing job. It was a pleasure to come today.
But I'm thrilled that you were here. You take care. We'll talk again soon. Bye-bye. Thank you guys for being here. I want to say next week, because we're getting ready to go into April, on Monday, we're kicking Monday off with amazing guests. We are going to be here with the fabulous Dr. James Adams. And he's going to be talking with us specifically. I don't know if you guys remember, but we had him on years ago, pre-pandemic, because he was doing a study about gut flora and the reduction of autism symptoms from having gut flora replaced. It was, if you remember, it was the thing that the kids were drinking the milkshakes that had the flora and fauna. It was poo from other people, but it was all sanitized. But they were drinking it and it was gonna. Well, we need to do a follow-up to hear what that study did. And he's got an amazing new product that we want to talk about, which is helping with great accuracy to verify that someone is on the autism spectrum. I know it's like a lot, but it's going to be great. And that's going to be our day one for April. We are not doing a show with Dr. Grampy next Tuesday. She's not available, but we'll be back. We're going to kick April off. It's going to be, so fabulous. Going to make your wig go. Poof. All right. So we'll be back next week. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now. If you found anything helpful in this video, please give us a like. In fact, make sure that you smash that subscribe button on YouTube and give us a like on Facebook. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Instagram for important updates. And please download our free podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much. See you next time.